You have a game idea. In your head, it's incredible. You can already see the trailer. You can hear the music. You can imagine a streamer discovering the secret ending, the comments filling up, and players arguing about which build is completely broken. There is just one problem. None of that game exists yet. And because you created the idea, you may actually be the worst person in the world to judge it. You are not playing the game that exists. You are playing the perfect version inside your imagination. The version with no bugs, no boring levels, no production limits, and no players getting confused by the tutorial. So, how do you know whether your game idea is actually worth making? Not whether it's guaranteed to become a hit. Nobody can prove that. The real question is simpler. Has this idea earned the next week of your life? And after that week, has it earned the next month? In the previous video, we talked about making your first game small enough to finish, but a small game can still be the wrong game. So before you spend a year polishing it, your idea needs to earn 5 kinds of proof. First, define what worth making actually means. Imagine two developers making the exact same 2-hour horror game. One wants to learn Leiden and release a finished project. The other has quit a job and needs the game to pay rent. Same idea, completely different test. For the first developer, the game may be worth making if it teaches the right skills and gets finished. For the second, it also needs an identifiable audience, a sensible price, and some evidence that people might buy it. Developers mix these goals all the time. They call a project just for fun, then feel like a failure when it does not sell. Or they call it commercial, but refuse to change anything because it is their personal vision. Neither goal is wrong. The problem is playing one game while keeping score with the rules of another. So finish this sentence before you open your engine. This game will be worth making if you can finish it, if it gets you a job, if 100 people genuinely love it, if it earns back its budget. Pick the scoreboard before the match begins. Second, identify the player promise. Most game ideas are described as containers full of features. It is an open world, story-driven, survival crafting RPG with procedural levels, base building, and online co-op. That tells me how much work the game contains. It doesn't tell me why I would wanna play it. A player promise describes the experience. Maybe you are a tiny mechanic keeping a gigantic machine alive while it walks through a storm. Maybe you run a cozy potion shop, but every customer is also a suspect in a murder investigation. Now I can imagine a decision. I can imagine a tension. I can imagine what the player might feel. Here is a useful test. Explain the game without using the words open world, roguelike, souls-like, cozy or procedural. Those labels can help players categorize your game later, but they cannot do the creative work for you. Stardew Valley meets Dark Souls is a comparison, not a design. What does the player repeatedly do, and what makes that action interesting? If you cannot answer that, don't add more features. The idea is not too small. It is still too blurry. Third, prove the riskiest part and play. This doesn't mean building the first hour of the final game. It means finding the assumption that, if false, destroys the entire project. If your idea is a movement game, the risk is probably whether moving feels good. If it's a detective game, the risk may be whether interpreting clues creates real deduction instead of random guessing. If it's a social game, the risk may be whether the rules produce interesting conversations. You might be able to test that with paper cards before writing networking code. Before Portal, a team of DigiPen students made Narbacular Drop, a student game built around placing two connected portals on surfaces. It didn't have Portal's final characters, writing, or iconic art direction, but the unusual spatial mechanic was already playable. Valve didn't have to imagine the promise from a document, the team could demonstrate it. That is what your prototype should do. It doesn't need menus, 20 enemies, and a cinematic intro. It should attack the reason the game deserves to exist. And yes, there is an obvious objection. Some games need polish before they become fun. That is true, but incomplete. A horror game may need sound and lighting. A narrative game may need one properly written scene. Prototype doesn't mean gray cubes. It means the cheapest, honest version of the promise. If the game is supposed to make players feel clever, does one puzzle do that? If it is supposed to create chaos with friends. Does one 10-minute round do that? If the answer is no, another 50 levels will not rescue it. Fourth, look for evidence from people, not compliments. If you ask a friend, do you like my game idea? You have put them in a terrible position. They are not reviewing a product. They are trying not to hurt you. So don't ask people to predict their future behavior. Watch their present behavior. Do they request another round? Do they keep playing after you stop explaining? Do they remember it a week later? Once you have a public page or demo, do strangers download it, join your community, or add it to a wishlist? Balatro is almost a perfect example. Local Thunk originally planned an online version of a card game he played with friends. The early prototype had no jokers, no blind selection, and a much simpler upgrade system. The design changed as he explored it. Then he shared a version with friends. Months later, one friend came back with unusually strong praise and said he had played the beta for dozens of hours. That is a much stronger signal than cool idea. The player had already paid with something valuable, time. This is why comparable games matter. Find several games for the audience you think you understand. Positive reviews reveal what players value. Negative reviews reveal recurring frustrations. Look at how those games present themselves, what they charge, and whether players still discuss them. A crowded category is not automatically bad. It may prove that an audience exists. An empty category is not automatically an opportunity. Sometimes it is empty because nobody wants it. Your goal is not to prove that your idea has never existed. Your goal is to explain why a recognizable group of players would choose your version. Now, another objection. Players don't know what they want. Often they don't. But you are not asking them to design the game. If a tester says add multiplayer, you don't have to add it. The useful information may be that the game feels lonely. Their solution can be wrong, while the problem they felt is real. Listen carefully to explanations. Trust behavior more. Finally, ask what the idea costs, not only in money, but in content and attention. Some ideas are cheap to describe and incredibly expensive to finish. The player can combine any two objects, sounds like one feature. But if you have 100 objects, the possible pairs explode into thousands. Every character remembers your choices. Sounds like one system. In practice, it touches dialogue, quests, save data, testing, and every future story decision. The dangerous cost is often not the core mechanic, it is everything the mechanic demands. List the content multipliers, characters, animations, levels, dialogue branches, weapons, networked players, platforms, and combinations between systems. Then test the most expensive unknown early. But production fit is also personal. Do you have an advantage that makes this game more achievable for you? An art skill, technical specialty, or access to a community that understands the subject? And more importantly, do you want to make the boring 80%? Loving the fantasy is easy. Do you also want to tune the same jump for 3 days? Rewrite unclear dialogue, fix controller navigation, and watch a tester miss the button you thought was obvious. Passion is not proof that a game will sell, but for a long solo project, a complete lack of passion is evidence that production may break you before the idea gets a fair chance. So, is your game idea worth making? Don't answer with confidence, answer with evidence. You know what success means for this project. You can describe the player promise without hiding behind general labels. The cheapest honest prototype produces at least a glimpse of the intended feeling. Real people, not only supportive friends, show interest through behavior, and the production cost fits your time, skills, money, and willingness to do the unglamorous work. If all five are present, don't immediately commit 2 years. Greenlight the next stage, a stronger prototype, a small vertical slice, or a public test. If one is missing, pivot, keep the strongest part and change the weak assumption. And if the idea only works when you imagine unlimited time, perfect execution, and an audience that has not shown up yet, park it. it. Parking an idea is not failure. You can keep the mechanic, the theme, or the lesson and use it somewhere better. The best developers are not the people who magically know which ideas will succeed. They are the people who learn how to be wrong cheaply. Because a game idea is not valuable because it sounds brilliant in your head. It becomes valuable when reality keeps giving you reasons to continue.